Hey, everybody. Hope and pray that you're doing well today as we come to our word from the Word. And today, that word is freehand. Freehand. Now, if you've ever tried to draw anything, hadn't used any stencils or any rulers or straight edges, things like that, that's freehand. You're drawing just the way that you can. If you're like me, that's a very limited choice of pictures that you're going to have there. Now, and some people are very artistic as well. But here's the beautiful thing that Paul is talking about here in Second Corinthians chapter 3. He begins talking about not maybe the freehand in that way, but a freehand of a letter of commendation. He starts the chapter by saying, look, we're not saying all these things, all this that I just said in the first two chapters. I'm not saying that so we can kind of start this all over again. I don't need letters of recommendation like a lot of the false teachers and even the Judaizers, that they would use those things to say that, hey, uh, thinking that they had to go the Jewish way and kind of merging that into Christianity. You know, you had to be faithful to the Mosaic covenant and stay with the law that way, and they were just stuck in the traditions without moving ahead. And so Paul didn't do the letter of recommendations and or letter of commendation rather, and he says I don't need it, and the reason that he gives is beautiful. And I'll be honest, this may be coming to a sermon near you in the very near future. But these three verses here are beautiful when he's talking about what really needs to be written. Let's just dive right in. And this is Second Corinthians chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. Do we begin again to commend ourselves? Or do we need, as some others, epistles of commendation to you or letters of commendation from you? You are our epistle written in our hearts, known and read by all men. Clearly, you are an epistle of Christ, ministered by us, written not with ink, but by the Spirit of the living God, not on tablets of stone, but on tablets of flesh, that is, of the heart. And then hearing that and reading that, I just got this beautiful picture of the Holy Spirit not using a mold, not using a straight edge, not using a stencil, but that as He has called us as believers, that He is by freehand, because He is just that powerful, that He is writing our stories day by day. Now, what he was saying, what Paul was saying is, look, you haven't been molded by the law. You have been written not on a tablet of stone. Like, I mean, this would have had them thinking about the Mosaic law and the Ten Commandments and those tablets of stone. He said, you weren't written in that way, but you are written by the Holy Spirit of God on flesh. In other words, He has written it on your heart. The problem for a lot of the Jewish audience that turned against the gospel and wouldn't listen to Paul is that they had hearts of stone, and they were written on only by the law. They never went any further. They never accepted Jesus Christ as a fulfillment of the law, and to look ahead to what Christ had to offer. And so since they didn't do that, they were they were hard-hearted. They weren't listening. As he goes on to say through this chapter, that they had a veil over their face, just the same way that the people, that there was a veil over Moses. So after he had come down, the glory wasn't shining so brightly on them. And he gives this beautiful description of how that is for so many, even still today, that they look back and they are still veiled from seeing the truth. But he says, you, O Corinthian Christians, you have received it with unveiled, right? It has now been revealed to you and you see it. And it has been written on your heart by the Spirit of God. The other part of that is that he says, look, I don't need anybody else to write a letter of commendation because you are my letter of commendation. In other words, you, in the way that you reflect Christ, you are proof that what I am doing is actually for the Lord. Right? I mean, you think about this. Think about any pastor, any preacher, any preacher of the gospel at all, any minister, any teacher, any Christian. Our goal should be that others would not only see the change in our lives, but that they would see the change in the lives of those whom we've witnessed to, those whom we've preached to, those whom we've taught. Now, if you think about that, right, that would be like people being able to look at the congregation of Chestnut Level Baptist Church and know that I'm preaching the truth because of the changed lives that they have. Now, as soon as I say that, that puts a lot of pressure on you as a congregation, and it puts a lot of pressure on me as the pastor. And wherever if you're not at our congregation, our church, then you think about the pressure that puts on you and your pastor, the one who's teaching you. But it would make us all stop and think: are we acting as those who Paul was referring to, who were looking with a veiled face, who never uncovered the truth? The truth was proclaimed to them, but they never saw it. Today, I would just ask you this: do you have a hard heart, or do you have a heart of flesh? Do you have a heart that's stamped with a hard heart that's just chiseled in with legalism and tradition? Or do you have a heart of flesh that has been molded and made and written on by the Spirit of the living God, who is ever writing your story freehand? Today, which one of those describes you? And if the lost and dying world was to look at you, to look at any of us, but look at your own life first, if they look to you, would you be proof of somebody else's message? Would you be proof of the change? As the old saying goes, if you were ever put on trial for being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? God bless you. And I pray you have a great, great day.